It's extraordinary.
Another opponent.
Whoa!
What a head kick.
It's
all over. A spectacular finish, just like that. Headshot, bang. Done.
What's up, everyone? We're back with another episode of The Fight Corner, episode number 16, taking a look at UFC 305. Dricus du Plessis taking on Israel Adesanya from Perth, Western Australia. We're also going to be taking a look at the entire main card, prelims and early prelims, as well as who took home any of the $50,000 bonuses. Then we'll be taking a look at next week's fight card, Jared Cannonier taking on Kyle Borralho. So without any further ado, let's get into this week's episode. And of course, your main event is Dricus du Plessis and Israel Adesanya for the middleweight belt. Du Plessis having success on his blitz attacks in the first round when he's charging in, and also with his leg kicks. And Adesanya also having success on the feet, and he lands a good right hand to the body near the end of the round. And a hard inside leg kick from Adesanya to start the second, and Du Plessis with a great level change right to the takedown. But Adesanya defends well initially, but Du Plessis is able to eventually get to the back against the cage, landing some ground and pound, but gives up the position while looking for the submission, allowing Adesanya to get back to his feet. Now, Adesanya lands a kick right on the belt line and looks to pressure Du Plessis with strikes, who gets in on the takedown, grinding Adesanya against the fence, mainly controlling, but does land a few good short shots as well. In the third, great body shots from Adesanya, and again to the body with a front kick and a left hook. And Adesanya nearly with a spinning elbow, and Du Plessis cracks him with a hard left hand and follows up with lefts and rights. Adesanya though does respond with a right hand, and both looking to stand their ground and land punches, each going back and forth, and it was a really great round. In the fourth, beautiful combination from Adesanya, and he defends the takedown from Du Plessis, and a hard body kick from Adesanya with a left hand and a right uppercut afterwards. And Adesanya continuing to attack the body, but Du Plessis clips him on the temple with a left hand, and then a series of right hands forces Adesanya to the cage, where Du Plessis gets on his back, looking to get under the chin, but he goes right across it, puts a lot of pressure through Adesanya, and he's forced to tap. And Dricus du Plessis remains your middleweight champion, getting the submission at 3:38 of the fourth round. And if all goes according to plan, he will be facing Sean Strickland in a rematch for that middleweight title. In the co-main event, we had Kai Kara-France taking on Steve Erceg in the flyweight division. Erceg using his jab well in the opening round, and Kai unable to land anything significant until late in the round when he drops Erceg with a perfect overhand left, and Kai swarms, but Erceg makes it back to his feet, only to be dropped again with a right hand against the cage, and the ref jumps in to stop the fight. And this was another great performance by Kai Kara-France, getting the KO finish at 4:04 of round number 1. In the feature bout, it was Mateusz Gamrot taking on Dan Hooker in the lightweight division. Gamrot landing some good shots on Hooker early, and then getting in on a single leg, taking Hooker down. But Hooker is able to get back to his feet, only to get dropped by what looks like a counter double punch, right and left hand. And Gamrot jumps guillotine before settling on top, looking for ground and pound. Hooker is able to survive and works back to his feet, where he cracks Gamrot with a left hook on the temple and then follows it up with several more punches, wobbling Gamrot, who looks for the single leg, but Hooker keeps the fight standing to the end of the round. And in the second, Gamrot gets in deep on a takedown off of a Hooker kick and gets to the ground and moves right into side control. But Hooker is able to work back to his feet, and he gets right back in the face of Gamrot, landing a left to the body. and Gamrot in again on a single leg, but Hooker defends with the guillotine, which Gamrot escapes and looks to reshoot, but Hooker sprawls and lands some short elbows before breaking to the center. And Hooker with a flurry near the end of the round, and Gamrot again looking for the single, which Hooker defends with some more short elbows. In the third, again, Gamrot catches the Hooker kick and gets the fight to the ground, but Hooker does really well working back to his feet and continues his forward pressure, landing to the body and the head. But Gamrot is finding return shots, and he gets another takedown stuffed by Hooker, and both landing late in the round, and Hooker with a big left hook right before the bell. And this was a real close fight, and it did go to a split decision where the judges had it 29-28 for Gamrot, and two of them 29-28 for the winner, Dan Hooker. Next up on the main card, it was Jairzinho Rozenstruik taking on Tai Tuivasa in the heavyweight division. And Rozenstruik doing a good job controlling the pace and the space in the first round, outlanding Tuivasa and avoiding the big shots coming back at him. Each landing good shots in the second, and Rozenstruik with a nice combination, ending with a knee, and Tuivasa attacks the leg of Rozenstruik but hurts himself in doing so, and Rozenstruik looks to pounce, swinging punches, backing Tuivasa against the cage and landing to the body and the head. And back in the center, Rozenstruik continues to pick off Tuivasa with shots from the outside. In the third, Rozenstruik still staying on the outside, landing on Tuivasa, who can't seem to find his range until later in the round, landing his left hand. But it's Rozenstruik leading this one, landing the far better shots, and they both land before the end of the round. And this went to a judge's decision, which I thought was an easy, unanimous decision, but apparently not. It was a split decision, 30-27 and 29-28 for Rozenstruik, and one judge gave it 30-27 for Tuivasa. That was Judge Howie Booth. That's a crazy scorecard. I think that really needs to be looked into. I don't know if this person even knows what he's watching, but yeah, that's a horrible, horrible scorecard. And kicking off the main card, it was Jingliang taking on Carlos Prates in the welterweight division. Each looking to attack with kicks early in the round to the legs and to the body. And Prates catches Lee on the side of the head with a left hand that briefly drops him to the ground. And Prates is starting to find a home for his jab and that left hand, and using some real nice footwork to evade the attacks of Lee. And Prates sitting Lee down again against the cage, and then dropping him again with a straight left, and follows up with more strikes against the cage, but Lee fires back to get Prates off him. In the second, Prates continuing to have success on the feet, landing rights and lefts with a beautiful step-in knee to the body. And Prates continues to land his punches and drops Lee with a left hand. But Prates lets him get back to the feet, where he continues to land hard, accurate shots with his left hand before he hits the off switch with a right and then a left hook that ends the night for Lee, who is out cold, first time getting knocked out in his career. And yeah, Carlos Prates is a problem in the welterweight division, and he gets the KO finish at 4:02 of the second round. Your feature prelim, Walter Walker taking on Junior Tafa in the heavyweight division. And a hard leg kick from Walker to open the fight. And Tafa returns some good shots, forcing Walker to look for the takedown and get the fight to the ground. And in the dying seconds of the first, Walker drops back for the heel hook, and Tafa didn't tap, but he did yell or scream, and that is to be taken as a tap from my understanding. It's a verbal tap, so you don't have to say tap, you don't have to actually tap the person. Any scream in pain or any scream out would be taken as a verbal tap. And yeah, Walker gets the submission victory at 4:56 of round number 1. Next up on the prelims, it was Joshua Culibao taking on Ricardo Ramos in the featherweight division. And Ramos with a wild spinning kick at the start of the first, and Culibao with some good low kicks and one that really hurts Santos, and he looks to follow it up with another, but he slips and Santos jumps on his back looking for the choke. But Culibao defends initially, But Ramos looks to attack again, and it was really deep. But Culibao does a great job correctly attacking the top hand and getting free. Really great job to survive those late attacks. In the second, a hard 1-2 from Culibao, and he continues to chop down the lead leg of Ramos, dropping him to the ground, with Culibao looking for ground and pound from the standing position before allowing Ramos back to his feet. And it was a dominant second round for Culibao, and it should be 1-1 going into the third. And Culibao landing his left hand early in the third round and avoiding a lot of what was coming back at him, but Ramos does land a left hook that cuts Culibao over the right eye before clinching up and getting to the back and ending the round in top position. And this did go to a judge's decision, and it was split 29-28 by one of the judges for Culibao and 29-28 by the other two for Ricardo Ramos. Really close fight, and yeah, it just came down to that third round. I think that cut from the left hook of Ramos and then the control at the end of the round was probably just enough to secure it on those two judges' scorecards. Next up on the prelims, it was Casey O'Neill and Luana Santos in the women's flyweight division. O'Neill do a good job pressuring Santos and staying in her face, landing shots, but Santos is finding her right hand as well. In the second, Santos in on a takedown early, looking to get to the back of O'Neill, who is able to turn and break off of the cage. And O'Neill with a nice low kick and continuing the forward pressure, landing a good left hand off the Santos kick. And in the third, Santos looking for the throw off of the headlock, but ends up giving up her back to O'Neill, who lands some ground and pound before locking up the body triangle, controlling from the back and looking for the face crush to end the round. And this was an easy unanimous decision victory for Casey O'Neill, 30-27 by two of the judges and 30-26 by the other. And some lovely moves at the end of the fight, which I'm sure Raygun would be very proud of. Kicking off the prelim card, it was Herbert Burns and Jack Jenkins in the featherweight division. And Jenkins is looking real good on the feet to start the first, digging to the body really well and utilizing his jab. And ripping to the body again of Burns against the cage and then landing upstairs. And Jenkins continues to land on the feet, forcing Burns to look for the takedown, but Jenkins is having none of it. And back on the feet, Jenkins really putting it on Burns, before Burns gets in on a double leg, getting the fight to the ground in half guard, which he really needed. Both landing shots early in the second, and each with some hard calf kicks as well. And Burns with a great shot to the takedown, right into half guard again. And this is Burns' path to victory because Jenkins has a clear advantage on the feet, but Burns drops back to the leg lock, giving up top position and then pulling guard off of a stuffed takedown. Jenkins steps back to the feet and unloads two left hooks to the body before dropping Burns with a left and a right hand upstairs. And Jenkins follows Burns to the ground but is not able to get the finish and allows Burns back to his feet, where Jenkins blasts him with two hard low kicks and then another two before the end of the round, and one of those really hurt Burns. A low blow stops the action early in the third, but when they resume, Jenkins goes right to the body again, and then with a calf kick before dropping Burns with a right hand, following up with some ground and pound and looking for the finish, but decides to step back and get the fight back to the feet, but Burns cannot reply and stays on the ground, and Mark Goddard stops the fight at 48 seconds of round number 3. And this was a really impressive victory for Jack Jenkins after that really disappointing loss in his previous outing in the UFC, where he broke his arm in a fight he was winning. Kicking off the early prelims, it was Tom Nolan and Alex Reyes in the lightweight division, both using a lot of kicks early in the first before Reyes gets in on a takedown and looking to get on the back. Nolan does slip out the back door and really starts to put the pressure on, landing shots on the retreating Reyes and a short elbow in close, and both landing on each other, with Reyes seeming to get the better of the exchange. But Nolan is still advancing, applying forward pressure to the end of the round. And in the second, good elbows and knees in the clinch early from Nolan, and Nolan drops Reyes with a left hook, but Reyes pops right back to his feet, and Nolan keeps the pressure on, landing shots on Reyes and staying in his face. But Reyes is not out of the fight, but Nolan is definitely ahead at this point. And Nolan again staying right in the face of Reyes to start the third, and Nolan looks to sit into a Darce, nearly locking it up, but Reyes defends and they both land good shots up against the cage. And Reyes really looked to make something happen, really going for it at the end of the third, looking to get that finish. But alas, it went to a judge's decision, which was unanimous, 30-27 by two of the judges and 29-28 by the other, in favor for Tom Nolan. Next up on the early prelims, it was Ricky Glenn taking on Song Kenan in the welterweight division. Big left hand from Glenn sits Song down early in the first, but he does a good job working back to his feet with both landing in the clinch, before Glenn forces the fight against the cage, and they break, and Song putting a lot of pressure on Glenn, landing some good shots, forcing Glenn to clinch up and look to grind on Song, and they break before the end of the round, with Song landing some good shots before the bell. In the second, Song again landing good shots on the feet, busting Glenn up with punches and landing a nice elbow in close. Another straight right hand pops Glenn's head back, and he looks to clinch against the fence, where Kenan lands short elbows and a right hand on the break. And a massive hematoma on the right side of Glenn's head is starting to appear, and Kenan continues to land on Glenn for the rest of the round. And Kenan starts the third with the same pressure, landing shots and taking Glenn to the ground with ease. Glenn does work back to his feet and eats a hard elbow on the break. And Kenan continues to have success on the feet, and Glenn is just not able to get anything going on the feet or with his takedowns. And Kenan continues to pick Glenn off from range for the rest of the round. And some quite wide scores on this one. It was 30-27, 30-26, and 29-28, all for your winner by unanimous decision, Song Kenan. And kicking off the entire card, it was Jesus Santos Aguilar taking on Stuart Nickel in the flyweight division. And Aguilar punching inside and getting to Nickel's back, but Nichols uses the Kimura grip to come up on top and get to Aguilar's back, landing some good ground and pound. Aguilar is able to work back to half guard, but Nichols continues with the ground and pound. Aguilar turtles and they scramble to the feet, where Aguilar jumps guillotine, and it was very tight. Nickel did look like he was potentially going to survive or tough it out, but Aguilar had that grip sunk in and Nickel went unconscious. And that is a great submission victory for Jesus Aguilar with the guillotine at 2:39 of round number 1. As for your bonuses for the evening, the fight of the night honors went to Dan Hooker and Mateusz Gamrot for that wild split decision victory in favor of Dan Hooker. And the performance bonuses went to Kai Kara-France for that KO victory over Steve Erceg, and to Carlos Prates for that absolute demolition job that he did on the leech, Jingliang. Looking ahead to this weekend's fight card, Jared Cannonier and Caio Borralho from the UFC Apex. This will be a really great fight in the middleweight division. Caio Borralho obviously looking to jump up in rank, and Jared Cannonier looking to maintain in and about that title shot position. We also have Angela Hill and Tabitha Ricci, Neil Magny and Michael Morales, Edmund Shabazian and Gerald Mershart, Danny Silva and Dennis Bazukia, and Zachary Reese and Jose Daniel Medina. It's going to be a really good card, especially compared to some of the recent fight night cards that we've had. I mean, I say that now, but it might turn out to not be so great. But again, that's this weekend from the UFC Apex, Jared Cannonier and Caio Borralho. And that does it for another episode of The Fight Corner. This was episode number 16. Thank you all again for tuning in and all the support. It really does mean a lot. If you're new here, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It all goes a long way. And we will be back later in the week with a news roundup show as well as a recap of this week's fight card, Jared Cannonier and Caio Borralho from the UFC Apex. So until that time, peace.